we have seen how one could enter the data directly into the NoSQL database of Google Cloud Platform, which uses the Firestore as well as the Firebase. The Firebase has two versions. One is the real-time database, the other one is the Firestore. So we directly entered the details into the NoSQL database. But in a real application, this hardly happens. You will be using some scripting, maybe JavaScript or Python script, to have the data populated into the NoSQL database. So you need to have the Python installed in your system to communicate with Google Cloud Platform. The point to note here is that you should have a basic understanding of how Python works, how the Python scripts works. You need to have an understanding on that, because in this course I'll not be going into the details of the Python scripting. I'll be using Python to interact with Google Cloud Platform. But just from the information perspective, you can have that Python install from the Python site, python.r. But my suggestion is to have Jupyter Notebook installed, because that's a kind of an interactive tool wherein you can execute the Python script. And Jupyter, it's called Jupyter Notebook, is extensively used in machine languages, not the machine languages, but in the machine learning. In the Python, the Jupyter Notebooks is, extensively used there. So it's better to use Jupyter, and at times I'll be using the Python through Anaconda. So, Jupyter suggests that you have the installation done through Anaconda rather than installing through Python, because it could run into some of the challenges. So if you're installing through Anaconda, it's fairly much more simpler. So I have installed through Anaconda. So I'll just show in my screen. So it's looking. It's Anaconda. Okay, here it is. So get into the Anaconda prompt, and there you need to just enter Python. So if you enter Python, and this is called the, those who have used Python, yes, this is the Python prompt. There you can directly enter the commands. So the other one is Jupyter Notebook. Open up the Jupyter Notebook. It just takes a few seconds to open up the Jupyter Notebook. So it has opened up the Jupyter Notebook. I can minimize and I can say new Python. So this opens up the Python kernel, and you can directly enter the commands over here and then run it. Once you run it, that Python interpreter interprets and provides you with a result. And so this is extensively, as I said, Jupyter is extensively used in machine learning particularly for the using the algorithms, and then you can have the graphs drawn for all your regression analysis and other kind of charting. So I would suggest, yes, you have Jupyter installed, and you have thereby, through Anaconda. So you can, through the Anaconda prompt, you can get into the Python and execute the Python script. So that's just an overview about the Python. So in the next presentation, I'll get into the further more details. Thank you. Let us now progress into creating a project using Firebase and how we can interact with the Firebase database, that is the NoSQL database, how we can interact through Python. So you need to have an account with the GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform. I might be keep referring to GCP, which means Google Cloud Platform. But in case of Firebase, yeah, once you have an account with GCP, yes, Firebase access is through the link provided here, console.firebase.google.com. So I have already created a project. So just add a project. So you give a project name, Firebase, because I already have a project. I say Firebase 2. This is the project ID. It automatically assigns. Then I accept, and this might take some time before it gets created. So I say create. So this will take some time to get created. Provisioning resources, finishing up. And your project is ready. Let's say continue. Okay, it is get to the database. So create real-time database that you need to do. So click on create. See, the point to remember here is you need to start with the test mode because yeah, it is currently will be open to the internet. That is fine because we are trying to learn NoSQL. So ensure that you do it with start in the test mode, enable it, and now you're almost there. So now it is created. Okay, this is the top node. So we will then get into the Python and see how you can interact instead of directly entering the details in the NoSQL database. We'll interact through the Python and populate the data through the Python into the real-time NoSQL database. Another point to note here is go to settings, project settings, and whatever is mentioned here, whatever, because this relates to the database I have created, because during interaction you need to refer this one. So whatever you get the information, the same needs to be referred in the Python script to interact with the NoSQL database. So we'll see that as we progress. So stay tuned. Thank you. So let's now start looking at the Python, how to interact with the Firebase NoSQL database, which is provided by GCP. So to use Python, we need to use a library which is called Firebase, which is indicated over here. You need to install Firebase into the into Python so that it can be used. So what is Firebase? Firebase is a Python interface to the Firebase REST API. In layman terms, it allows you to use my Python to manipulate the Firebase database. So that package needs to be the Firebase package needs to be installed in Python. That is post installation of the Python or with Anaconda or with Jupyter. So once you have installed, there are some initialization steps which needs to be happen. First, you need to import Firebase. I mean, those who are if you're already worked in Python, when you say import Firebase, that package gets imported. I mean, it is ready. It becomes ready to be used in the Python programming. And then this is the configuration part. The configuration part is very important. So this is kind of an initialization which I showed in the last presentation. You need to go into the setup of that project and then get the details of the API key, the database URL and so on. This needs to be used in the scripting, and then we'll be initializing the Firebase. So this command needs to be there. In post initialization, then we can start interacting with the NoSQL database. You can issue commands such as push. When you say push and set is something like those who are coming from the RDBMS background, the push and the set is something related to an insert command. Using in SQL, you will be using insert into the table, the corresponding data. So similar to that, you need to use push as well as set can be used. Only difference is that there is a unique key. In case you use push, there is a unique auto-generated key is there, and then underneath it you'll have all this. The data is the child data, so you'll have a key generated, and under the key you can have the child, which is the data. Whereas in the set method, you can set the key. So in this case, it is going to be Morty will be a kind of a key. Underneath it, you will have the data. So you can use the set method or push method, which is something, as I said, something similar to the insert. And then you can update the existing data. Existing data which is available in the NoSQL database using update, and then you can also remove is something like deletes the existing data or existing entry. So there's a spelling mistake, existing entry. So it removes that entry from the Firebase. So again, just for an information purpose, so you need to install the Firebase where you have the pip. So normally it will be in the scripts folder. I have installed Anaconda. So basically it will be there in the startup Anaconda and Anaconda prompt. And so if you have done that installation, then you will have the pip script. Here you need to issue the command which is there here, pip3 install, or because pip3 install Firebase 4 is the latest one, because I was getting an error when I installed with pip3 install Firebase. Some of the package was not getting installed, so I found out that we need to use Firebase. So it depends on the installs you have got, so maybe you need to check that. So once you have that, before using before trying to get further, so try issuing this command. Okay, then if it goes through, then without any error, because sometimes if it is not installed properly, it will throw an error. So once the installation has gone through, try issuing a command, get into the, and this is the Python prompt. So inside the Python prompt, import Firebase. It should not report any details. If it reports, it could sometimes, it might say the module Firebase cannot be found. That means the installation is not successful. So you need to reinstall, just tinker around, check what went wrong. So we now have all the setups in place. So we'll now get into the next presentation, wherein we'll set the configuration for the database I have created, and then we'll start issuing the commands and see whether the data, whatever the data we are sending across to the NoSQL database of Firebase, whether that gets added or updated or deleted. So stay tuned. Thank you. Let's now look at a demonstration or an activity wherein we'll be interacting with the Firebase database, the real-time database of NoSQL offered by the Google Cloud Platform. So we'll be using Python scripting. Using Firebase, we'll be communicating with the database towards inserting the data, towards updating, and as well as deleting the data. So I have opened the Firebase console, and additionally, I logged into the Jupyter Notebook as well. So yeah, to invoke the Jupyter Notebook, I'm using Anaconda. So in Anaconda prompt, once you type in Jupyter Notebook, then the browser will open the Jupyter notebook, and then you get into new, and Python, you'll get into the Python interpreter prompt. So yeah, we should execute side by side. Let me see what can be done. Yeah, this is perfect. So on the left over here, you have the database. On the right, here you have the Python interpreter. We are using the Jupyter notebook. And if you recollect, there need to be some of the steps through which you need to initialize the Firebase and then start executing commands so that we are able to update the data in the Firebase database. The point here is you can have that in a Python script and then execute the Python script. That is one option. The other option is, because it's a demonstration, just to know what are the steps involved, I thought we'll do that in the interpreter prompt itself. So initially, you have to import the Firebase, that is the library. So while importing, you have so this is successful. And next is you need to set the configuration. This configuration is specific for my database. So what you need to do is you have to use the configuration which is available to your database. So if you recollect, you need to go into the setting and pick up the configuration related data from there and then use it over here. So copy it over here, and then again you need to run it. So we have imported it. Imported Firebase, and we have made the kind of a pointer, because you have an API key, it provides you with the database URL. So we are just saying to Firebase that this is the configuration of the database you need to use towards execution of the script. The next one is we need to initialize the Firebase, and I am passing the configuration which is here, which is provided, that we have already executed. So all we need to do is copy the wrong file. This needs to be, need to copy and then paste it over here, and then run it. So we have initialized the Firebase and assigned to a variable. Next one is we need to initialize, say that that's a database. So I'm making DB is a kind of variable referring to the Firebase database. Execute. So that is perfect. So all the initialization steps are done. The next step is you can push the data into the database. So this is the data, name Albert, and the child will be users. Here you don't have users, you have only names, and under name you have a key, and then name is king. So actually when you see that here or here, there is no users. So what will happen is when you push it across, it should create users, then you will have a key followed by name. That is the expectation. Let's see what happens. So fingers crossed. So push. Here you go. So users, name Albert, and this is the key. Because we are using the push data, it creates a key. If you don't want if you want your own key, then refer that key also and use the command set data. That will create the key you want. Whatever you can have, whatever you can give that in numbers if you want, or in the in the character form also you can give. So let's see over here what happens. One interesting fact is it's a real-time database, so generally you don't need to refresh. Whenever you execute, automatically you will see the data over here. It gets refreshed automatically whenever the data is updated. So in the next one, we are setting the key as Chris. So what will happen is you will have a use under users instead of the auto created one. Additionally, we are not updating. So additionally, along with the auto created one, we'll have one more entry as Chris. Under Chris, you'll have Albert. Albert will be a kind of a child of Chris. So let's see now, execute and see what happens. So you got Chris. Under Chris, you have an Albert. Apart from this is with a push, this is with name as Albert. So that's perfect. So you also have an output over here. Next, let's update. So I want to update, I'm referring to Chris, and instead of Albert, I wanted to update as Morty instead of Albert. So that's a kind of an update I'm issuing. So referring to the child users, then again that child is Chris, and then update the name field over here is Albert. This needs to get updated. So let's run it. Perfect. So this gets updated instead of Albert, it got updated as Morty. So we have seen initially an insert, just like an insert you perform in an RDBMS database. Here we are using either push. In case of push, you will have a key auto-generated, and if you want to override and have your own key, then you need to use set. Then you have updated. And finally, let's also delete the record which belongs to Chris. That is, here you use the remove command, something similar to delete in the database. So we are trying to delete Chris, that record related to Chris, that is Morty from the database. So let's run it. So this will get deleted. Yeah, got deleted. So we have in real time, we have executed the scripts, and then we had the we had the data created, updated, and removed as well from the NoSQL database. So stay tuned. We'll get into the subsequent presentation. We'll look at you're able to insert the data, update, delete. We'll also see how to whether we can retrieve the data, we can read the data which is already stored in the database. We'll see that in the subsequent presentation. So now that we have seen how to insert the data into the NoSQL database, we tried inserting it, we tried updating it, we also removed the data from the NoSQL database. So we'll progress further, and then we look at how to retrieve the data. Assuming there is already a data, we wanted to retrieve it so that it can be used in the applications. So we'll see that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun the program again. I mean the initial setup, because I opened a new session. So let me rerun it again. The first step is import of the Firebase library. The next step is the configuration, which is related to the database, kind of a pointer. And then we initialize the Firebase. That's step 3. And then we assign it to the variable, the Firebase database. We are doing that. Okay, all that is done. So what we'll do is, towards retrieving, we'll feed in more data. So one way to do that is, through the multi-location update, meaning, instead of a single record update, we can do a multiple row update. So we'll initially assign values, and then if you look at here, under users, you have a single document, and a single document has a data field there. So we will, under users, we'll create multiple documents. So to create a multiple documents, we have created this variable. So what will happen here is, it will create Morty. Under Morty, you'll have name as Smith, and under Rick, you'll have Tony. This is, in addition with the automatically created key, which is here. This is automatically created key. We are making Morty as a key and Rick as a key, and the data field is Tony. So to do that, we'll execute the DB update. So we'll execute the DB update. Once you update the DB, Since there is no Marty, there's no Rick, then it will be created under the users. So that's the expectation. So you'll find here Marty is created, and that's a kind of a document using, or the key. Under the key, yes, you have fields, data fields like name, Smith, and here again Ricky, sorry, it's Rick and Tony is there. So basically under the user collections, you have the keys. The one is automatically created key, the other one is we have created the key, and then we have the data fields. So now let's issue the retrieve. We want to retrieve all the values under the user. To do that, again, the select statements, kind of a select statement, which is equivalent. I mean, select in the sense we use that in the relational database management through the SQL query. Here it is get. So initially you have to specify this one, I mean this instruction. So the child is users and we are getting it and we are passing it to a variable. So we'll execute that and then we are printing the values. So it's called the order dict. So if you see here and this one order dict, you have the key and followed by the data field, and key followed by the data field. Alternatively, you can use that in the, if you are using the program, then you can even use the for loop, something similar to this. All users same, but we are using the for loop to retrieve them. But it will be one after the other. So you have the key, this is auto created, and then the name Marty we have updated or set that, then the name Rick followed by Tony. So we have issued the select as well. So just to recap, we have done the insert, update, deletes, and then we have done the retrieve or the select as well.